Democratic Congressman Jason Crow of Colorado. He is on the Intelligence and Foreign Affairs Committee and has served as an Army Ranger in both Iraq and Afghanistan. Congressman, thank you very much. I've been pointing out that this is bipartisan concern about the leakiness of the Pentagon in particular. And you know the military far better than I do. How does a Massachusetts guardsman at Otis Air Force Base in Cape Cod not only have the access, but they don't have enough secure procedures to know that he's taking stuff home?
Well, Andrea, this is outrageous. There's no doubt about that. This is a terrible leak that's going to have consequences for our ability to gather information, for our sources to trust us, for our allies to trust us. And we're going to have to look at reforms. I sit on the House Intelligence Committee. I'm a former Army Ranger. I've been to war. I know the consequences of leaks like this on the battlefield. But there's three things going on here. You have the first is the level of classification. That's secret, that's top secret, that's compartmented. People get different levels of classification. The second is the level known as the need to know. So even if you have a top secret clearance, that doesn't mean that you should have access to everything that's top secret. And it's that level that seems to have failed here. And then the third is putting mechanisms in place to make sure that people are printing out materials, that if they're accessing things in an unusual way, that is spotted and detected. And that also is a point of failure. So we're going to look at the last two categories and see what needs to be fixed here.
Now, he did not seem to have the political motivation, at least according to his friends who talked to the Washington Post, the members of this affinity group. He is not a whistleblower, they say. He is not anti-government, although he has some very right-wing, ideas and is upset about Ruby Ridge and Waco, and they were dealing in racist memes. But he's not typically, a Snowden or a charity winner, correct?
Well, there are certainly indicators and red flags here. This just goes to show again that one of our biggest national security threats comes from within, from domestic terrorism. Right? It's domestic terrorists that have blown up federal buildings, that have planted bombs at marathon finish lines. Over and over again, we see this domestic extremism rearing its head. That's why Liz Cheney and I actually came together after January 6th, and we introduced a bill called the No Clearance for Domestic Terrorists Act that would actually revoke security clearances for people that are a part of domestic extremist groups that have avowed theories of overthrowing the government. These folks shouldn't be in positions of public trust, and they shouldn't have security clearances. But Andrew, if I want to say one last thing, I want to make sure that viewers understand what problem we have here and what problem we don't have here. I actually disagree with your last guest. We are not the leakiest intelligence service in the world. Far from it. We actually have the envy of the world of intelligence services. We have by far the largest. We have the most sophisticated. We provide intelligence to people all the time. We're the best in the world at it. This is a terrible leak, but this is not endemic. This does not happen all of the time. So let's take a step back and fully understand that this is a problem that needs to be addressed, but we also have an exceptional intelligence service and professionals that do amazing work every day.
No, and I think we would agree, as would Ken Delaney and my colleague here, who has covered the intelligence community. It's just that the Pentagon seems to have a proliferation of these kinds of leaks and not enough, protections in place. And as you pointed out, the need to know. I still don't understand why a Massachusetts National Guardsman in Cape Cod would need to know signals intelligence involving foreign leaders and whether they were or were not going to arm Ukraine. It's completely outside of his area. He's not working with NATO or European countries. He's not working with Asian countries. And that need to know restriction doesn't seem to be applying here.
You're absolutely right. That was the problem. There's no reason, from what I know of this case right now, or an Air National Guardsman should have access to the extent of that information. And that's what needs to be fixed. There's no doubt in my mind that needs to be fixed, and we're going to push hard from Congress to fix it. But I also want to make sure that people understand that this does not happen all of the time, that we have an exceptional intelligence service, that we have the largest in the world. We deal with things throughout the entire globe, and the vast majority of folks handle this well and professionally.
One of the documents, one of the new documents that NBC has not seen, does say that China has a new hypersonic missile that can evade U.S. defenses. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, I'm not going to speak as to particular intelligence matters. I'm a member of the Intelligence Committee, so I'm not going to talk about weapons programs and specific intel from specific countries. But I can say that there are a variety of threats we face. Those threats are real. It is a very dangerous and volatile world right now, and we take that charge very seriously. I've dedicated my life to the national security of this nation, first in uniform, now as a member of the National Security Committees in Congress, and I will continue to focus on that and work in a bipartisan way to make sure that we address those threats.
And finally, if I could switch your focus to what is happening in Russia. We do know now from a tweet from the U.S. ambassador to Russia, Lynn Tracy, she finally got to see the jailed Wall Street Journal reporter, Evan Gershkovich, today. She tweeted out, I visited the Wall Street Journal, Evan Gershkovich, today at the Fortovo prison. It's the first time we've been permitted access to him since his wrongful detention more than 2 weeks ago. He's in good health and remains strong. We reiterate our call for his immediate release and hashtag free Evan. So your thoughts about this? Is there hope to get him out without having him go through the entire legal procedure there, which can last more than a year when you're charged with espionage?
Well, there is hope to get him out, and I know the administration is working night and day to do so, and I'm glad that Ambassador Tracy had the opportunity to meet with Mr. Gershkovich. But this is what's happening. Vladimir Putin is weak. He's desperate, so he's taking hostages. Mr. Gershkovich is wrongfully detained because he is not a spy. He has never been a spy. He has never been employed by the U.S. government in any way, shape, or form. So this is a wrongful detention, and it just underscores that U.S. citizens traveling to Russia should be extremely careful. And you should not travel to Russia unless you absolutely need to, because you could end up as a pawn in Vladimir Putin's very dangerous game here.
Thank you very much, Congressman. Appreciate your being with us today.